was standing in the hallway outside my mom's bedroom at 2 in the morning, holding my phone with shaking hands, trying to decide if I should call the police or just run. The door was cracked open just enough that I could see shadows moving inside, hear voices that didn't match the story she'd been telling me for weeks. My dad had been dead for 7 months. 7 months of watching my mom transform into someone I didn't recognize. 7 months of pretending I didn't notice the way her boyfriend looked at me when she left the room. 7 months of telling myself I was imagining things because grief does strange things to people. But I wasn't imagining what I'd just found on his laptop. I wasn't imagining the photos, the messages, the careful planning. And I definitely wasn't imagining the sound of my mom's voice on the other side of that door, laughing in a way I hadn't heard since before Dad got sick, defending him even now. The worst part wasn't that I'd been right about him all along. The worst part was realizing my mom probably knew. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure you're alone. Because what I'm about to tell you about my mother is something I can never unhear. And after this, you won't be able to either. My dad died on a Tuesday in March, and by June my mom had a boyfriend. I know how that sounds. I know exactly what you're thinking because I thought it too, every single day. But grief is complicated, and I tried to give her grace because she'd watched the man she loved waste away for 18 months, and maybe she'd already done her mourning while he was still breathing. Maybe she'd earned the right to find some kind of happiness, even if the timing made my stomach turn. That's what I told myself anyway, in the beginning, when I was still trying to be understanding. His name was Derek. He was 43, 3 years younger than my mom, with the kind of smile that probably worked on a lot of women. He worked in sales, drove a leased BMW, and wore cologne that cost more than our monthly grocery bill. Mom met him at her grief support group, which should have been my first red flag, but I was 19 and drowning in my own loss and trying to finish my sophomore year of college from home. I didn't have the energy to police my mom's dadding life. I barely had the energy to get out of bed. The first time I met Derek, he brought flowers. Not for my mom, for me. White roses, which he said represented remembrance and honor for my father. I remember thinking it was a thoughtful gesture, maybe even too thoughtful for a guy who'd only been dadding my mom for 3 weeks. He shook my hand firmly, looked me directly in the eyes, asked me questions about my major and my interests like he genuinely cared about the answers. My mom watched us interact with this hopeful expression that made me feel guilty for every suspicious thought that crossed my mind. She looked happy. She looked alive. And I hadn't seen her look either of those things since Dad's diagnosis. I wanted to hate him, but he made it difficult. He fixed the leaking faucet in the kitchen that had been dripping for months. He took my mom to nice dinners and actually listened when she talked. He asked permission before staying over, even though it was my mom's house and she didn't need permission from anyone. He remembered that I was lactose intolerant and bought almond milk creamer without being asked. Small things, considerate things, things that made me feel like maybe I was being unfair. Maybe I was projecting my own issues onto a situation that was actually okay. But then there were the other things, the little moments that felt slightly off, like a picture frame hanging just crooked enough to notice, but not crooked enough to justify fixing. The way his eyes would linger on me for half a second too long when I walked into a room. The way he'd find reasons to touch my shoulder or my arm when he talked to me. Casual touches that could have been friendly, but somehow never felt that way. The way he'd position himself between me and the door, not blocking it exactly, but making me aware of where he was in relation to where I was. I told myself I was being paranoid. My dad had just died. I was emotionally vulnerable. I was probably seeing threats where none existed. This was my mom's first attempt at moving forward, and I was determined not to sabotage it because of my own unresolved trauma. So I smiled when Derek was around. I laughed at his jokes. I pretended not to notice when his hand would rest on the small of my back as he passed behind my chair at dinner. A gesture that could have been innocent but made my skin crawl. Summer came, and I decided not to go back to campus for the fall semester. I told my mom it was because I wanted to take some online classes and save money on housing, which was partly true. The other part, the part I didn't say out loud, was that I didn't want to leave her alone with Derek. I couldn't articulate why, couldn't point to any specific thing he'd done that was actually wrong. But some instinct deep in my gut was screaming that something wasn't right. So I stayed. That's when things started to shift. With me home all the time, Derek was around more. He started coming over during the day when my mom was at work, saying he had a flexible schedule and wanted to check if we needed anything. He'd bring lunch, suggest we watch a movie, ask if I wanted company while I studied. Always friendly, always appropriate, always just helpful enough that I couldn't justify telling him to stop coming around without sounding ungrateful or paranoid. One afternoon in July, he came over with Thai food while my mom was at a dentist appointment. We ate in the living room, and he asked me about the guy I'd been seeing before Dad got sick, a relationship that had fizzled out when I'd come home to help with my father's care. I told him it hadn't been serious, which was true. Derek nodded thoughtfully, then said something that made my blood run cold. He said, "You know, Sophia, you're the kind of girl who deserves someone who really sees you. Someone mature enough to appreciate what you have to offer." The way he said it, the way he looked at me when the words left his mouth, there was no misinterpreting the intention. This wasn't fatherly advice or friendly encouragement. This was something else entirely. I felt my face go hot, my hands go cold. I mumbled something about needing to study and excused myself to my room. I sat on my bed for 20 minutes, heart pounding, trying to decide if I'd actually heard what I thought I'd heard, or if I was losing my mind. I didn't tell my mom. How could I? What would I even say? Your boyfriend made a vaguely inappropriate comment that might have been completely innocent. He looked at me weird. I had no proof, no concrete evidence, just a feeling that was getting harder and harder to ignore. And my mom was happy. She was laughing again, making plans again, talking about the future in a way that didn't sound like grief. Who was I to take that away from her based on a feeling? So I started avoiding Derek. I'd stay in my room when he came over, make excuses to be out of the house when I knew he'd be there. My mom noticed, asked if everything was okay between us. I told her everything was fine. I was just stressed about school. She seemed to believe me, or maybe she just wanted to believe me. Either way, she didn't push. But Derek noticed too, and instead of backing off, he started trying harder. He'd text me directly, asking if I was avoiding him, if he'd done something to upset me. The messages were always carefully worded, always deniable if shown to anyone else, but the underlying message was clear. He knew I was uncomfortable, and he wasn't going to stop. He'd leave small gifts outside my bedroom door, books he thought I'd like, coffee from my favorite shop. He'd compliment me in front of my mom, saying things like, "Sophia's got such an old soul, and she's going to make some guy very lucky someday." And my mom would smile like it was sweet instead of seeing how wrong it felt. August came, and my mom announced that Derek was moving in. She framed it as a practical decision. His lease was ending, and we had plenty of space, and it didn't make sense for him to get his own place when he was spending most of his time at our house anyway. She asked what I thought, and I could see in her eyes that she wanted my blessing. She needed me to be okay with this, and I couldn't tell her the truth because the truth sounded insane even to me. So I said it was fine. I said whatever made her happy was fine with me. Derek moved in on a Saturday. He didn't have much, just some clothes and a laptop and a few boxes of personal items. He set up in the guest room downstairs, right across from my mom's room, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd positioned himself strategically. His room was at the bottom of the stairs. To get to the kitchen or the front door from my room, I had to walk past his door. I was suddenly aware of his presence. In a way, I'd never been aware of anyone's presence before. This constant, low-level alertness that left me exhausted. The first week was uneventful. Derek was respectful, gave me space, seemed to understand that I needed time to adjust to the new arrangement. I started to think maybe I'd been wrong about him. Maybe my grief had twisted something innocent into something sinister. Maybe I owed him an apology for the assumptions I'd made. Then came the night I couldn't sleep. It was almost midnight, and I went downstairs to get water. The house was dark, except for the blue glow coming from under Derek's door. I wouldn't have thought anything of it, except I heard something. A voice. My voice. Or not my voice exactly, but something that sounded like me. I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening. It was a video. He was watching some kind of video, and the girl in it sounded exactly like me. Same tone, same cadence, same little laugh I do when I'm nervous. But it wasn't me. It couldn't be me. I hadn't made any videos. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone as I pulled it out and opened the audio recorder app. I needed proof. I needed to know I wasn't imagining this. I stood there for 3 minutes, recording the sounds coming from his room, the voice that sounded like mine saying things I'd never said, doing things I'd never done. When I finally went back upstairs, I didn't sleep. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to that recording over and over, trying to convince myself there was some reasonable explanation. But there wasn't. There was no good reason for Derek to be watching videos of someone who sounded exactly like me at midnight. No innocent explanation for the way he'd paused it when he heard me in the hallway. The way his door had opened just a crack after I'd gone back upstairs. Like he'd been checking to see if I was still there. I wanted to tell my mom. I picked up my phone a dozen times that night, typed out messages I never sent. Because what was I going to say? I heard something that might have been nothing. I have a recording of muffled sounds that could be anything. She'd think I was jealous or resentful or trying to sabotage her relationship. She'd choose him over me. I was suddenly certain of that in a way that made my chest feel tight. So I decided I needed more. I needed real evidence, something concrete that even my mom couldn't deny. I needed to know what was on Derek's laptop, and I needed to find it before he did whatever he was planning to do next. The next morning, I called in sick to my online classes and waited for my mom and Derek to leave for work. My mom worked as an office manager at a dental practice, regular hours, home by 6. Derek's sales job was less predictable, but he usually left around 9 and didn't come back until afternoon at the earliest. I had a window. I had maybe 5 or 6 hours to figure out what was on that laptop without getting caught. His room was neat, almost obsessively so. Everything had a place. Everything was organized with the kind of precision that felt calculated. The bed was made with military corners. His clothes were arranged by color in the closet. His toiletries were lined up on the dresser in perfect rows. And there, on the desk by the window, was his laptop, closed but not locked away. He was confident. He thought he was safe here. My hands were sweating as I opened it. I expected a password, but the screen lit up immediately, unlocked. For a second, I thought I'd gotten lucky. Then I realized it was worse than that. He'd left it unlocked on purpose. He wanted someone to find it. Or more specifically, he wanted me to find it. This was a test, or a trap, or some kind of twisted game I didn't understand yet. The desktop was clean, just a few standard folders and a web browser. I checked his recent files first. Documents, spreadsheets, normal work stuff. Then I opened his browser history, and that's when my stomach dropped. Page after page of searches, all about me. My full name, my college, my high school, my old social media profiles I thought I'd deleted years ago. He'd been researching me since before he met my mom, going back months, maybe longer. He knew things about me I'd forgotten about myself. I felt sick. I wanted to close the laptop and run, but I forced myself to keep looking. There had to be more. In his downloads folder, I found it. Hundreds of photos, all of me. Some were from my public Instagram from years ago. but others were different. These were taken without my knowledge, through windows, from across rooms, zoomed in and cropped to focus on specific parts of my body. There were photos of me sleeping, taken from my bedroom doorway. Photos of me getting out of the shower, the bathroom door cracked, just enough for a camera lens. Photos of me in tank tops and shorts, taken from angles that made innocent clothing look suggestive. And then there were the videos, dozens of them, all carefully labeled with dates and times. I clicked on one with shaking hands, and there I was, doing homework at the kitchen table, completely unaware I was being filmed. The video zoomed in on my face, my chest, my legs, lingering on each part with a patience that made me want to vomit. Another video showed me doing yoga in my room, filmed through my window from outside. Another showed me arguing with my mom about something trivial, but the camera wasn't on my mom. It was only on me, capturing my anger, my frustration, my vulnerability. But the worst part was the other folder, the one labeled with just a date 3 weeks in the future. Inside were screenshots of conversations, planning documents, research about Rohypnol and other date rape drugs, articles about how to avoid leaving evidence, forum posts about techniques that I couldn't even finish reading. He was planning something specific, something that was supposed to happen in 3 weeks. I took photos of everything with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I had to take multiple shots to get anything clear. Then I closed the laptop exactly how I'd found it and got out of his room. I made it to the bathroom before I threw up, my entire body rejecting what I'd just seen, what I'd just learned. I had evidence now. I had proof that Derek was not who he pretended to be, that my instincts had been right all along, that I was in actual danger. But I still didn't know how to tell my mom, because this wasn't just about Derek being inappropriate or creepy anymore. This was about him being dangerous. This was about him having targeted our family deliberately, having chosen my mom specifically to get access to me. And I had no idea how deep this went or who else might be involved. I spent the rest of the day trying to figure out my next move. I could go to the police, but would they take me seriously? I'd technically broken into his room and accessed his computer without permission. Could the evidence I'd found even be used if I'd obtained it illegally? I could tell my mom, but she was so invested in this relationship, so dependent on Derek for her happiness. Would she believe me? Or would she think I was making it up, jealous of her new relationship, unable to cope with Dad's death? I decided to wait until evening, until all 3 of us were home, until I could sit my mom down and show her the photos I'd taken and make her understand that this wasn't about me being uncomfortable or dramatic. This was about her boyfriend being a predator who'd been planning to assault me. But Derek came home early. I heard his car in the driveway at 2 in the afternoon, hours before he should have been back. I was in my room, and I heard him come in, heard him walk directly to his room, heard him moving around. Then silence. Long, terrible silence. Then footsteps on the stairs, coming up toward my room. I locked my door. I'd never locked my door before, not once in the entire time we'd lived in this house. But I locked it now, and I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand, ready to call 911 if he tried to come in. He knocked, gentle, friendly knocks. "Sophia, you home?" His voice was casual, normal, like nothing was wrong. I didn't answer. He knocked again. "I know you're in there. I can hear you moving around. We should talk." Still friendly, but with an edge now. An expectation that I would open the door because good girls open doors when someone knocks. I said, "I'm not feeling well. I'll talk to you later." My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to, shakier than I wanted it to. He would hear the fear and know I'd found something. "I really think we should talk now," he said, and the friendly pretense was gone completely. "I know you were in my room, Sophia. I know you opened my laptop. Did you find what you were looking for?" My blood went cold. He'd known. He'd known I would look, had probably planned for it, had maybe even wanted me to find those things. This was part of whatever game he was playing, whatever sick fantasy he was acting out. "I'm calling the police," I said, louder now, trying to sound braver than I felt. He laughed, actually laughed. "And tell them what? That you broke into my room and illegally accessed my personal computer. That you found some photos I downloaded from public websites. That you invaded my privacy, and now you're trying to justify it by making up stories." He paused. "Who do you think they'll believe, Sophia? The grieving widow's boyfriend who's been nothing but kind and supportive? Or the troubled daughter who clearly can't handle her mother moving on?" He was right, and we both knew it. I had no proof that would hold up, no evidence that couldn't be explained away, no credibility against his carefully constructed nice guy persona. I'd walked right into this, and now I was trapped. "Your mom will be home in a few hours," he said, his voice soft again, almost gentle. "We'll all have dinner together like a family. And you're going to sit at that table and smile and pretend everything is fine. Because if you don't, if you say one word about what you think you found, I will make sure your mother knows exactly what kind of daughter she raised. I have photos too, Sophia. Photos of you that your mother wouldn't like. Photos I can make appear anywhere I want them to appear." He was bluffing. He had to be bluffing. But I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk my mom seeing whatever fabricated evidence he might have created. Couldn't risk her believing his version of events over mine. So I stayed silent, listening to his footsteps retreat down the stairs, listening to him move around the house like he owned it. Because in a way, he did. My mom came home at 6, cheerful and oblivious. Derek had made dinner, something elaborate with too many courses, and he served us like we were guests at a restaurant. My mom kept saying how lucky she was, how wonderful Derek was, how happy she was that we were all together. And I sat there, pushing food around my plate, trying to figure out how to tell her the truth without destroying her. I decided to try subtlety first. I asked Derek how work had been, mentioned that I'd heard him come home early. He smiled and said he'd had some personal errands to run, nothing important. My mom didn't even look up from her plate. I asked him about his laptop, said I'd been thinking about getting a new one, and wondered what kind he had. He said it was just a basic model, nothing special, offered to let me borrow it sometime if I needed to. My mom smiled like this was evidence of how generous and thoughtful he was. Every attempt I made to hint at the truth just made him look better and made me look paranoid. He was good at this, had probably done this before, had perfected the art of seeming innocent while being guilty. And my mom was so deep in her happiness that she couldn't see what was right in front of her. After dinner, I helped clean up while Derek and my mom watched TV in the living room. I heard them laughing, heard him telling her some story about his day, heard her responding with genuine affection. And I realized that she wasn't going to believe me. No matter what I said, no matter what evidence I showed her, she'd already made her choice. She'd chosen Derek over reality, chosen comfort over truth, chosen the fantasy of a new relationship over the safety of her own daughter. I went to bed that night knowing I had to leave. I couldn't stay in this house with Derek, couldn't trust my mom to protect me, couldn't wait around to see what would happen when the date in that folder arrived. I started making plans, figuring out where I could go, who I could stay with, how I could disappear without making it obvious that I was running. But Derek was smarter than I gave him credit for. The next morning, my car wouldn't start. Dead battery, Derek said, probably needed to be jumped. He offered to take a look at it later, said it wasn't a big deal. But I knew better. He'd sabotaged it, made sure I couldn't leave, made sure I was dependent on him and my mom for transportation. I became a prisoner in my own home. I started keeping my door locked all the time, even during the day. I stopped leaving my room except when I knew Derek was gone. I lost weight because I was too afraid to eat food he might have touched. My mom noticed, asked if I was okay, said I seemed stressed. I told her I was fine, just busy with school. She seemed relieved by the explanation, happy to not have to dig deeper. Derek started leaving notes under my door. Little messages that seemed innocent on the surface, but carried obvious threats underneath. Hope you're feeling better. Remember, we're family now. Your mom is so happy these days. It would be terrible if something ruined that for her. Looking forward to our talk. Soon. Each note made my anxiety spike higher, made my room feel smaller, made the walls close in tighter. I tried to reach out to friends, but I'd isolated myself so much over the past year that nobody was checking on me anymore. I tried to confide in my aunt, but she told my mom I'd called sounding upset, and my mom just assumed I was having trouble coping with Dad's death. She suggested therapy, offered to find someone I could talk to. Derek agreed enthusiastically, said he thought it was a great idea, probably hoped a therapist would prescribe me something he could use against me. 3 weeks became 2 weeks. 2 weeks became 1. The date in that folder was approaching, and I still didn't have a plan. I couldn't leave, couldn't tell anyone, couldn't do anything except wait and hope that somehow this would resolve itself. Then my mom announced she was going to a conference for work. 3 days out of state, leaving in 2 days. She seemed excited, said it had been years since she'd traveled for work, said Derek had encouraged her to go. Derek smiled and said he'd take good care of me while she was gone. My mom actually thanked him, and I knew with absolute certainty that this was it. This was what he'd been planning, what he'd been waiting for. 3 days alone in the house with me, no witnesses, no interruptions, no one to hear me scream. The date in that folder was the 2nd day of my mom's trip. He'd planned this down to the last detail. I had 48 hours to figure out how to survive. The day my mom left for her conference, she hugged me extra tight and told me she loved me. She reminded me that Derek was there if I needed anything, that I should text her if anything came up, that she'd be back before I knew it. Derek stood in the doorway watching us, wearing that same gentle smile he always wore, and I wondered if my mom could really not see what was behind it. Or maybe she could see it and just didn't care. Maybe her own happiness was worth more to her than my safety. I still don't know which possibility hurts more. The first night was quiet. Derek ordered pizza, kept his distance, acted completely normal. I stayed in my room with my door locked and a chair wedged under the handle, listening to every sound in the house, waiting for footsteps on the stairs. But they never came. He went to bed at his normal time, and the house went silent. I didn't sleep. I sat up all night with my phone in my hand and a baseball bat across my lap, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. And somehow that was worse than if he'd tried something. Because I knew he was playing with me, stretching out my fear, making me wait. The anticipation was part of his plan. He wanted me terrified and exhausted by the time he actually made his move. The 2nd day was the date from the folder. I knew it as soon as I woke up, or didn't wake up because I'd never actually slept. This was it. Whatever he'd been planning for months was going to happen today. I stayed in my room all morning, skipping breakfast, ignoring Derek when he knocked and asked if I wanted lunch. I heard him moving around downstairs, heard him on the phone with someone, heard him laugh about something, acting like it was just a normal day. Around 2 in the afternoon, he knocked again. "Sophia, we need to talk. Please open the door." His voice was firm now, not asking, commanding. I didn't respond. He knocked harder. "I know you're scared. I know you think I'm some kind of monster. But you've got it all wrong. I can explain everything if you just give me a chance." I almost believed him. For half a second, I almost opened that door because I wanted so desperately to be wrong about everything. I wanted there to be some rational explanation for the photos and the videos and the planning documents. I wanted Derek to actually be the good guy my mom thought he was. But then he said, "Your mom asked me to check on you. She's worried you're not eating. She wants me to make sure you're okay." And I knew he was lying because I'd texted my mom that morning and told her I was fine. He was using her as an excuse to get to me. And that meant he knew I wouldn't open the door for him, but might open it for her. "I'm fine," I called through the door. "Tell Mom I'm just studying. I'll eat later." Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then, "Okay, Sophia. But we're going to have that talk eventually. You can't hide in there forever." His footsteps retreated downstairs, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. But I knew he was right. I couldn't stay locked in my room forever. I'd have to come out eventually, and when I did, he'd be waiting. I decided my only option was to get out of the house completely. My car still wouldn't start, but I could walk to the main road and call an Uber, get to a friend's house, or a police station, or anywhere that wasn't here. I waited until evening, until I heard Derek in the shower downstairs, and then I grabbed my phone and my wallet and tried to leave. He'd locked the doors, all of them. Front door, back door, side door to the garage. Every single one required a key I didn't have. And my windows had these old locks that had been painted over years ago and wouldn't budge no matter how hard I tried to force them. I was trapped. Actually, physically trapped in my own house with a man who'd been planning to hurt me for months. I heard the shower turn off downstairs. I ran back to my room, slammed the door, wedged the chair back under the handle. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone as I finally called 911. The operator answered, and I tried to explain. I tried to tell her about Derek and the photos and the locked doors and the date in the folder. But I was crying too hard, talking too fast, not making sense. She kept asking me to calm down, kept asking if I was in immediate danger, kept saying she needed me to speak more clearly. And then I heard Derek on the stairs. "Sophia," he was right outside my door. "Who are you talking to?" The operator heard him and asked if that was the person I was afraid of. I said yes. She said officers were on their way. Stay on the line. Try to stay calm. Derek tried the door, found it locked, started pushing against it. The chair held, but I could see the wood starting to splinter around the lock. "I just want to talk," Derek said, still pushing. "You've got this all wrong. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to explain." But he was breaking down my door. Whatever he wanted to explain, he wanted to do it with me trapped and helpless. The operator was still on the line, telling me to stay away from the door, telling me help was coming, asking for my exact address. I gave it to her, and Derek must have heard because he stopped pushing. "You called the cops." He sounded more surprised than angry. "Jesus, Sophia, do you have any idea what you've just done?" He wasn't trying to get in anymore. I heard him walking away, heard him going back downstairs, heard doors opening and closing. He was getting rid of evidence, deleting files, hiding things, preparing his story for when the police arrived. I stayed on the line with the operator until I heard sirens outside. 2 police cars, lights flashing, pulling into our driveway. I heard Derek open the front door, heard him greeting the officers with that friendly voice he used with my mom. I heard him inviting them inside, offering them coffee, acting concerned and confused about why they were there. I came out of my room shaking, clutching my phone with all the photos I'd taken of Derek's laptop. 2 officers were standing in the living room with Derek, who looked perfectly calm and reasonable. He saw me and his face did something complicated, part concern, part disappointment, part something else I couldn't read. "There she is," he said to the officers. "She's been having a really hard time since her father passed. Her mom is out of town, and I think she might be having some kind of breakdown. I've been trying to help, but she won't talk to me." One of the officers, a woman probably in her 40s, looked at me with sympathy. "Are you Sophia? You called 911. I nodded, unable to speak. The officer asked me what was wrong, why I'd called, if I was hurt. I shook my head and tried to explain about the laptop and the photos and the planning documents, but Derek interrupted. "I think this is about some photos she found on my computer," he said, sounding embarrassed. "Pictures of her from public social media. I was making a slideshow for her mom, a sort of tribute to their family, and I pulled photos from Facebook and Instagram. I think Sophia saw them out of context and got the wrong idea." The officer looked at me. "Is that what happened?" "No," I said, my voice finally working. "He's been stalking me. He has hundreds of photos he took without my permission through my windows while I was sleeping. He has videos. He has documents about drugs and dates and plans." I was talking too fast again, not making sense, sounding exactly like someone having a breakdown. "Can I see your phone?" the officer asked gently. I handed it over and showed her the photos I'd taken of Derek's screen. She looked at them for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she showed them to her partner, a younger guy who'd been standing quietly by the door. They had a whispered conversation I couldn't hear. Derek watched all of this with perfect calm, like a man with nothing to hide. "Officer, I don't know what she's showing you, but I can explain anything you have questions about. I have nothing to hide. She's welcome to check my laptop right now if she wants." But I knew he'd already wiped it. He'd had 10 minutes while I was on the phone with 911, and he'd used that time to delete everything. If they checked his laptop now, all the evidence would be gone. It would just be my photos of his screen against his word, and my photos weren't clear enough to prove anything definitively. The female officer asked Derek if she could see his laptop. He agreed immediately, led them to his room, handed it over without hesitation. I followed them downstairs, watching Derek's face for any sign of worry, but there was nothing. He was confident. He knew he'd won. They went through his laptop for 20 minutes while I sat on the stairs, and Derek made small talk with the younger officer about cars and sports. The female officer came out holding the laptop, her expression frustrated. "There's nothing here," she said to me. "Standard work files, some photos that look like they came from Facebook, nothing illegal or threatening." He deleted it, I said. He knew I'd called you, so he deleted everything. Did you actually see him delete files? She asked. I hadn't. I'd been in my room. I had no proof he'd deleted anything, just the certainty that he had. The officer looked at Derek, then back at me. I could see her making a decision, weighing my hysteria against his calm reasonableness. I think, she said carefully, that there might be some confusion here. Grief can make us see threats where none exist. I'd like to call your mother and let her know what's happening. Please don't, Derek said quickly. She's at an important work conference. I don't want to worry her over what's obviously a misunderstanding. I can handle this. But the officer was already dialing the number I'd given her. My mom answered on the second ring, and the officer explained the situation. I could hear my mom's voice through the phone, getting higher and more upset. The officer handed me the phone. Sophia, what is going on? My mom sounded scared and angry and confused all at once. The police are at our house. You're accusing Derek of stalking you. I tried to explain, but she cut me off. Baby, I know you've been struggling. I know Dad's death has been hard on you. But Derek has been nothing but kind to you, to both of us. He loves us. He's been trying so hard to help you feel comfortable. And this is how you repay him. Mom, he has photos of me sleeping, videos of me through my window, plans to drug me. There was a long pause. Then my mom said, in a voice I'd never heard her use before, Sophia, that is enough. You're clearly having some kind of crisis, and when I get home, we're going to find you a therapist. But right now, I need you to apologize to Derek and to these officers for wasting their time. Something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet snapping of the last thread connecting me to the mother I used to know. She'd chosen him. Even with police in our house, even with me begging her to believe me, she'd chosen Derek over her own daughter. I handed the phone back to the officer without saying anything else. She talked to my mom for a few more minutes, then hung up and looked at me with something like pity. Your mom is coming home early. She'll be here tomorrow morning. Is there somewhere else you can stay tonight? I nodded. I had a friend from high school who lived 20 minutes away. The officer offered to drive me there, and I accepted. I packed a bag while Derek watched from the hallway, not saying anything, just watching me with eyes that held a promise. This wasn't over. As I left, Derek called after me. Sophia, I hope you feel better. I really do. We're family now. We need to find a way to make this work. The officer drove me to my friend's house and gave me her card, told me to call if I needed anything. She didn't believe me either. I could tell. She thought I was a traumatized girl seeing monsters that didn't exist. But at least she got me out of that house. My friend Emily took me in without asking too many questions. I told her I'd had a fight with my mom and needed space. She let me crash in her spare room and brought me tea and didn't push when I clearly didn't want to talk about it. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what would happen when my mom got home, how she'd choose Derek again, how I'd have nowhere to go. I kept thinking about those files on his laptop, gone now. Nothing but my word against his. I kept thinking about how close I'd come to whatever he'd been planning, and how I'd barely escaped. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You made things very complicated today, but I forgive you. Family forgives. See you soon." It was him. I blocked the number, but 3 more texts came from different numbers, all the same message. He had burner phones. He'd been planning for this too. I finally fell asleep around dawn and woke up to 17 missed calls from my mom. I didn't call her back. What was the point? She'd already decided I was lying. Instead, I called my aunt in Colorado, my dad's sister, the only family I had left who might believe me. I told her everything, sent her the photos from Derek's laptop, begged her to help me. She believed me. Thank God, she believed me. She said she'd never liked Derek, had thought there was something off about him from the beginning. She offered to buy me a plane ticket to Denver, said I could stay with her as long as I needed, said we'd figure this out together. I left for Colorado that afternoon without telling my mom. I left a note saying I needed space, and I'd call when I was ready. I didn't tell her where I was going. I didn't give her a chance to stop me, or to convince me I was wrong, or to choose Derek over me one more time. My aunt picked me up from the airport and hugged me for 5 minutes straight. She didn't ask me to explain or justify or prove anything. She just believed me and kept me safe. We filed a police report in Colorado with all the evidence I had. It wasn't much, but it was something. We got a restraining order against Derek. We started building a case. It took 3 months, but eventually someone believed me. A detective in Colorado took my case seriously, worked with police back home, got a warrant for Derek's devices. Turned out he hadn't deleted everything as thoroughly as he thought. Forensic specialists recovered files, found backup clouds he'd forgotten about, uncovered a pattern of behavior going back years. I wasn't his first target. There were at least 4 other girls before me, all daughters of women he'd dated, all the same age, all the same general appearance. Derek was arrested. My mom finally saw the evidence, finally had to face what she'd chosen to ignore. She called me crying, apologizing, begging me to come home. But I couldn't. The home I'd left didn't exist anymore. My dad was gone. My mom had picked a predator over her own daughter. That house held nothing but trauma now. Derek pleaded guilty to avoid trial. He got 15 years. It should have been more, but his lawyer was good, and the evidence, while damning, wasn't perfect. I testified at his sentencing hearing. I looked him in the eyes and told the judge everything he'd done, everything he'd planned to do. He stared at me the whole time with no expression at all. My mom moved out of that house. She goes to therapy now, trying to understand how she missed the signs, how she let this happen. She calls me every week. Sometimes I answer. I'm trying to forgive her, but forgiveness is harder than I expected. She chose wrong when it mattered most, and that's not something you can just forget. I'm still in Colorado. I'm finishing my degree online, working part-time, seeing a therapist who specializes in trauma. I'm learning that what happened wasn't my fault, that I didn't imagine it, or cause it, or deserve it. Some days I believe that. Other days I still feel like that terrified girl locked in her room, hearing footsteps on the stairs. But I survived. That's what matters. Derek wanted to break me, and I didn't break. I fought back, even when no one believed me. I saved myself. And yeah, I lost my mom in the process, or at least the version of her I used to know. But I kept my life. I kept my sanity. I kept myself. After my dad died, my mom changed. And so did her boyfriend. But I changed too. I learned that family isn't always blood. I learned that survival sometimes means walking away. I learned that trusting your instincts, even when everyone tells you you're wrong, can save your life. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still check locks twice. I still can't watch movies about stalkers or home invasions. But I'm here. I'm alive. I'm safe. And Derek is in prison where he belongs. That's my story. That's what happened after my dad died and my mom found love with the wrong man. It's not the story I wanted to tell, but it's the one I lived. And if sharing it helps even one person trust their gut when something feels wrong, then maybe all of it was worth something.